Hello, my name is Carter Hutchinson. Today I'll be teaching you about Paint and Bodywork 101. Um, so with Paint and Bodywork, there is quite a few steps. A lot of it is very tedious work, and you have to get it absolutely perfect, or it's not going to come out right, and you're going to have to redo it, which honestly takes a lot more time. So it's good to go slow. You got to take your time. So the first thing you'd have to do generally is repair any damaged areas. So, for instance, on my truck, the bed sides were rusted out, so we had to cut out the bed sides and weld in a patch kit with spot welds. Um, but if it's bad enough, sometimes the patch kit won't work, and you will need a whole new body panel, which you can take off, and a lot of times they stick back on with this like adhesive type glue, and then you have to spot weld them back in. Um, but so in my case, I had to do a patch weld or a patch kit. Um, Once you have that all welded in, you can go through and sand down all the welds and make them all even and flat. Um, and once you get all those flat and grinded out, then you can start with your Bondo. What Bondo does is it goes on kind of like a clay, um, and you spread it around. Try to get it as flat as you can while it's in that like clay type state. Um, and then once you have your Bondo applied, you can then start sanding your Bondo. And the important part about sanding your Bondo is to make it all flat again, because you do try to get as flat as you can when you're applying it, but there's always like bubbles in it, and it's always kind of messy, and so you have to go through and sand it down to get it perfect to match the body line, because however you leave the Bondo is how your body will look. So if you don't get it sanded down flat and perfect, then it's not ever gonna look right. Um, After you fixed all your damaged areas, you can then go move on to your primer application. For primer, you need to sand down the whole truck down to the base coat so that the primer can stick to it. The main purpose for primer is to fill in any cracks and any minor scratches in the paint, and any rock chips or just any imperfections. Um, Once you have the primer sprayed on, then you need to go through and sand it all one more time. Um, and what sanding does is make it all flat and smooth again. Gives it a nice surface for the rest of your paint to bond to. Um, so then once you're done with your primer and you're done sanding your primer, then you can move on to a sealant and a base coat. And what the sealant does is it kind of seals in the it like seals all the scratches. It's like a upgraded version of primer, but it's not made as much to um, help stick. It's really just to help protect the paint and give it like a nice protective layer. So once you have your sealant on, then you go directly and apply your base coat. With your base coat, you have to do it in layers. The first layer is usually a pretty light layer that doesn't cover that much. You'll generally still see the sealant poking through after the first layer. So once that's dried a good bit, you go through and you do your second coat, third coat, and then so for my paint, it has a pearlescent in it. So it has blue, green, and silver sparkles in it. So we had to go through and do a fourth coat and spread it all around so that there wasn't any streaks in the paint. Um, so once you apply the paint in layers, you have to let it sit for about a day in a climate controlled area. And so then once that's done, you can then apply your clear coat. And what your clear coat does is it protects your paint from UV rays, rock chips, scratches. Um, it keeps your paint from getting sunburned and fading out. Um, and it also makes your paint shiny and gives it that glossy finish. There's also different types of clear coat. If you wanted, there's clear coat for a matte finish, so you spray it on and it'll make your vehicle look matte. Or in my case, we did a glossy finish, so it'll make it shine a little bit more, be a little more glossy. So once you got all your paint applied, once you got your clear coat on, then you can move on to your wet sanding and your buffing. Now this is probably one of the most tedious, annoying, I would say, parts of the whole process. And I would say that because you have to sand the whole entire truck, starting with 1,000 grit sandpaper. Well, it's wet sanding. With 1,000 grit sandpaper, and then you go up to 1,500, and then it was 2,500, and then 3,000 grit. So that's like what, five different stages of wet sanding the whole entire truck. And what that does is it gets any of your minor imperfections, minor scratches, any minor imperfections in your paint. It gets everything like that out of it. So then once you're done wet sanding, you have to go through and buff the vehicle. If you can see right here how this side of the hood is real glossy and the side of the hood is like matte finish, it's from buffing it. What buffing does is it applies a nice layer of wax that again protects the clear coat, and it fills in. It can fill in any unwanted scratches or imperfections in the paint. If you do not buff the vehicle right, you can easily burn the paint, which is putting like a little line through it. And if you burn the paint, then you have to resand down that whole body panel and respray it, the whole thing. So you have to be very careful with it all. So once you're done wet sanding and buffing the vehicle, that's your final step, and you'll have your finished product, which should look a little something like this if you did it right.